Welcome everyone to our webinar, Migrating Visualforce Pages to Lightning. My name is Greg Ruiz and I'm a Principal Developer Evangelist here at Salesforce. And it's my pleasure to be hosting the webinar today. But of course, you know, like any Salesforce presentation, if you've ever seen a Salesforce presentation, then you have probably seen the following slide, and that is our forward-looking statement slide. As we go through the course of the presentation today, I may make comments or say something about a future piece of functionality that might be coming, but please do not make your purchasing decisions based upon that. Please only make your purchasing decisions based upon what is generally available within the products today. All right, with that out of the way, there is one other thing that I would encourage you to do, and that is go social. Keep the conversation going after the webinar. You can talk to us on Twitter at Salesforce Devs, or use the hashtag #ForceWebinar. Of course, we also have a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, and you'll be able to find a recording of this very webinar on our YouTube channel at Salesforce Developers as well. All right, so let's dive right in. We were talking about migrating Visualforce pages to Lightning, but there's something that I need to get out of the way right up front. For any of those of you out there that are thinking, oh no, I've got to get off of Visualforce because I want to move to Lightning, that is simply not true. If you're thinking, oh, well, we're concerned that you might stop supporting Visualforce, I'm here to tell you we will continue to support Visualforce for the long term. Now, that being said, Lightning, of course, is our technology of the future, of today and of the future, actually, here at Salesforce. Everything that we're doing, all the new features and functionality and great new ideas that we're coming up with are going into Lightning. So just bear that in mind. But again, all of your Visualforce, you can keep right on going with Visualforce for the long term. Now, I'm going to show you some cool tricks about how to take that Visualforce and move it right into Lightning. So before we even get there, though, we need to ask ourselves, really, do I need this Visualforce page? So that's the very first thing as we begin that migration, thinking about throwing the switch on Lightning, we need to ask ourselves, what does it mean for all of my Visualforce pages? Do I need a Visualforce page? And you may be thinking, well, of course I need a Visualforce page. That's why we built it, and we've been using it all this time. Right, of course you have. But remember that one of the main things that we do, one of the main reasons that we use Visualforce is to do customizations, to do page customizations, to build pages that we can't build in the standard page layout editor. And one of the big features of Lightning, of course, is customization. In fact, using the Lightning App Builder, we can customize pages very, very easily, even just simply using drag and drop tools. So customization might be an area, if you've got a Visualforce page that was built strictly to customize a standard looking page, if you will, you may be able to do away with that Visualforce page just through the sheer ability to build that as a native Lightning page using Lightning App Builder. Now, there's another piece of that Visualforce questioning that you're going to have to do, and that is, okay, I need the Visualforce page. Now, is there anything in this Visualforce page that is going to break coming over into Lightning? Now, what might break? Well, you might have heard, if you've followed any of the discussions on moving to Lightning, that there are certain things that simply do not work as you move from Classic into Lightning. Things like JavaScript buttons, when we're doing overrides and things like that, those JavaScript buttons, now that's not in a Visualforce page necessarily, but those JavaScript buttons are not going to work. So you need to understand what you're going to need to do in your org in order to replace those JavaScript buttons with their alternative in Lightning. Now, this is a very deep subject, and there's a lot of different things that we've used JavaScript buttons for throughout the years, and that's why we even have a module on Trailhead to help you tackle that particular migration. And in fact, it's called Alternatives to JavaScript Buttons in Lightning. So I'd encourage you to check that out if you do have a lot of JavaScript buttons, which many of us do. But in our Visualforce pages, what about JavaScript just written in our Visualforce pages? Some of that might have to change as well. Things like a simple example might be a URL hack, because navigation inside of Lightning is done differently than navigation in Classic. So you might have to touch a few of those pieces of functionality as well. But otherwise, it really just works. Now, again, to recap, saying goodbye to Visualforce, you can do so if you've got analytics, for example, embedded in your record page layouts. That's built into Lightning, so you can replace all of that right inside of Lightning. Process flows, that's in Lightning as well. And again, page customization, that's all built in Lightning. So maybe you don't need that Visualforce page, but let's just say you do. Let's say you've gone through the whole thing and you said, I have to have this Visualforce page. What do you do now? Well, that's where we're going to spend the rest of the day talking, or the webinar at least, talking about moving that Visualforce page into Lightning. Now, as I just said a minute ago, it really just works, or at least mostly just works. With regard to those couple of items like the JavaScript, maybe that you might need to redo in order to fit into the Lightning world, other than that, things are just going to work. And I'm going to show you a demonstration of that coming up. But there are several different ways to move that or use that Visualforce page inside of Lightning. Obviously, you can use your Visualforce pages and continue to use your Visualforce pages as overrides. So if we want to override a standard button or link or something like that with a Visualforce page, that is entirely possible inside of Lightning. Also, we can make it a page, make it a tab, a Visualforce tab. We can continue to use Visualforce tabs inside of Lightning as well. Or perhaps even, as we'll look at a little bit later, maybe I'm even going to embed a Visualforce page into my standard page layout. If I've done that in Classic, I can continue to do that inside of Lightning as well. Or we can make our Visualforce pages, use them as actions. So global actions, as we see on screen, a global action can, of course, be a Visualforce page as well. Finally, again, as I mentioned, we can use Lightning App Builder to customize our pages, and that includes even using our Visualforce pages as Lightning components in those Lightning layouts. Now, not only that, we can go the other way as well, and we'll see this at the end of the webinar. We can take our Lightning components and go back the other way and go into Visualforce. So we can even begin to leverage that work we're doing in moving to Lightning, even for users that are still back in Classic, running those Visualforce pages inside of Classic. And this is using something that we call Lightning Out. And again, we'll take a look at that in just a little bit. But that's enough talking for me now. Let's dive into the demo. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my browser here, where I have my Classic app. I'm using an app we call Dreamhouse. Now, if you've not seen the Dreamhouse app before, you can go to dreamhouseapp.io, where my team, the developer evangelism team, has built the Dreamhouse app as sort of a reference architecture to show you all the crazy things that we can do inside of Lightning. But now I'm in Classic, because I've actually gone and done something else. I've reverse engineered our app back into Classic. So this is our Dreamhouse app. As I said, it's a fictitious real estate company. They're using the app to manage their properties, brokers, leads, and so on. And in fact, it's that leads page that I'm going to direct your attention to right now. As I click on that leads tab, you can see that this is actually a Visualforce page. Maybe you can't see that, but I'm just going to tell you it is, in fact, a Visualforce page that we're looking at here. So now, what does this mean for me to go over into Lightning? Of course, I have some functionality, things like being able to click the new button to make a new lead. I'll go back to the page again, maybe sort my table, by first name or last name by clicking a button. And I've checked to make sure that all these things are okay inside of Lightning. And I can do that simply by previewing Lightning within my org. You don't have to throw the switch. You can actually just go into your setup, into the Lightning Experience link, and actually throw the preview button on, if you will, that just allows you to go in, experience Lightning, check your pages to see what works, what doesn't. Of course, an easier way to do that is also just to run your readiness report and get a full listing of all the things that you might need to know about in terms of moving into Lightning. But I've already done all of that, and so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it now. I'm going to switch over into the Lightning experience. So I'm going to switch into Lightning. And I'm back inside of my Dreamhouse app, and here we have that very same leads tab. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that leads tab, and you can see there it is. There is that Visualforce page, and it just works. Well, mostly just works. You might notice I'm missing an icon here, but my things like my sorting, they still work exactly the same way. I can click my new link here, and this time I'm getting the new dialog from creating leads inside of Lightning. So those things are just working. It's fine. So then that brings us to the next question, and that is, okay, so I've got a page, I've checked it out, it's working fine inside of Lightning, but it looks like Classic. Is that okay? Well, that's going to be an answer that or a question that only you can answer, because you might say yes, you might say no, and that's sort of up to you. And that's the point. That old analogy that we talk about, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? That's how we move our org into Lightning. We can do it one page at a time. We don't have to say, you know what, I'm going to make everything perfect and look exactly like Lightning if I've got other work that I need to get accomplished. So it's fine to go ahead and run with this page looking like Classic, just running inside of Lightning. If that's okay with you, then that's okay with me too. And in fact, it's okay with us at Salesforce. And we even have, there's still some pages inside of Lightning setup that are actually old Classic pages, just running in Lightning, because we even realize it's a process moving to Lightning that you can't necessarily do all in one go. So take your time. Make those pages, move those pages into the Lightning look if you have the time and feel the need. So that brings us to then the next question is, how do I do that? Exactly how do I do that? Well, I'm going to show you right now, but before I do, I'm going to go ahead and bring up my developer console here so that you can see this page, that leads page. And here it is inside of my developer console. We can see it's a wonderful 24 lines of Visualforce. Now, this is just a very simple page, and I do want to reiterate that this is just a very simple page. I realize that many of us have much more complex pages that we might have to migrate, but learning how to attack it is what I want to get across here in this presentation. Now, let's start by just talking about how does Visualforce work. Visualforce is what we call a declarative language. Now, being a declarative language, what that means is we have tags like this Apex select list or the Apex page block table. These tags, we simply write a very simple tag with a few values added to or attributes on it, and that in turn becomes HTML. You see back over here on this other page, the browser doesn't understand Visualforce. So the Salesforce platform, when we clicked on that leads tab, it said, okay, let me go get that page. And then it looked at it and said, well, wait a second, this is Visualforce. I need to convert that Visualforce from that declarative markup into actual HTML. So This is actual HTML. In fact, let me make this just a little bit bigger so it's a little bit easier for you to see, because what I want you to do is to notice this is a table here. This is an HTML table, and that was created by that Apex page block table. Now, what does that mean for you and I? Well, if you haven't done a lot of front-end work, then let me just explain that HTML obviously is the structure of the web. It is the markup itself. In fact, let's go take a look by doing a quick inspection with our developer tools here, and we can see that this is that table. We can see things that are highlighting there in the background. This is that table that we were just looking at, and this is the markup for that table. Again, it was created by that Apex page block table. But what's important is really the thing right beside here, the class. This says class equals list. So again, HTML is but one piece of what makes the web. And the other piece, or one of the other pieces, is called CSS, or cascading style sheets. Those are the styles that make the page look the way that it looks. In other words, those are the styles that make Classic look the way that it looks. For example, here we have a class equals list, and that list class is actually just putting a border on the table. So a border, a 1 pixel solid gray border. Those are the values in that style that are being applied to that element. Of course, almost everything that we look at here is going to have some classes. Like here we have a table row, and it's data row even first. So we're applying actually 3 styles to that to begin combining those together to give us the look once again. Now, why do I keep telling you all of this? Because Lightning has its own look. Let me go ahead and close my inspector here, and I want to go over to a different org and show you here is that very same leads page. Now, if I had shown you this first and asked you, is this a Visualforce page? You would probably have told me, no way, it looks like a standard Lightning page. But this is that exact same Visualforce page. Now, how did we go from that classic look to this Lightning look? And the answer lies in those styles. It's all about the styles that we apply to the page that makes it have its look. Okay, so in order to make our page look like Lightning, we need to apply styles from Lightning. Well, where do we get those? Well, all of those styles actually come from something called the Lightning Design System. So you can find the Lightning Design System right here at lightningdesignsystem.com, or if that's too many letters for you to type, you can just type getslds.com, and that'll take you there as well, because that's what we call the Lightning Design System here internally. We just simply call it SLDS. Now, SLDS is much more than just CSS. There's some getting started guides as well as guidelines that I would encourage you to look at that talk about how we build applications and what we should take into account when we are creating our own applications so that they look like Lightning. But then once we've understood all those guidelines, it's time to start building. And the way that we build using SLDS is by going to the component section, where we can then begin to see, if I just begin clicking on, let's click on like maybe buttons here. That's something common that we see a lot. So here's our base button. It has no styling other than just the text. We have stateful buttons. We have buttons with icons and so on. And by clicking on these variants and states over here, you can see that we're seeing the change happen to the preview of the button, but we're also seeing the HTML that is applied or created with classes applied to give us the look that we're interested in. Okay, take a look at something else, maybe like a page header, for example, because we're going to need to use that here in just a little bit. So here again, a base page header. Here's the markup, or maybe this was an object home, then it might look something like this, or a record home looking something like this. But again, it's all of these classes that we're talking about that are being applied, that are giving us our look. Okay, so let's go back over to our page and let's talk about how we're going to give this page that proper styling. And I'm going to do that by first returning over to my developer console, because the first thing I need to do is give myself access to the styles from SLDS. Now, previously, and that is before the Spring 17 release, in order to use SLDS, I would need to go to the Lightning Design System site. I would need to go in and click on a link for my Visualforce guidelines. Then I would need to go generate a custom version of SLDS that I then downloaded and then re-uploaded into my org as a static resource. Now, the problem with static resources are great, except for one small problem, and that is the word static. Static resource means it's not changing. So if down the road, the SLDS team decides that all of our buttons should have red text in them instead of blue text, and they make that change in the CSS for SLDS, you're not going to get it. With a static resource, you're locked in. You're a frozen version in time, and there's no way for you to get all the newness that's coming out in that release without, once again, re-downloading that custom version, re-uploading, and replacing your static version that you had up there before. That's changed now. And I said prior to Spring 17, right, because in Spring 17, we now have a new tag. And I'll begin typing it. It's Apex SLDS right there. The SLDS tag is simply saying, I want to include SLDS in my Visualforce page. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that we're simply going to add the CSS, the link, if you will, to that CSS file, whatever the most current version of that CSS is on the platform. Now, if I were to ask you, what does CSS stand for? A lot of you would probably tell me that it's cascading style sheets, but very often that C can take on other meanings. For example, how about colliding style sheets? So if you've not done a lot of front end, understand this. A style sheet, if I had a style sheet, let's say it was called button, and it made the background color red on my buttons. And you had a style sheet named button, and yours makes the background style or background color be blue. If we were both to use, or we were to use both of our CSS inside of the same page, what color would the button be? And the answer is, I don't know, because it all depends. It all depends on whichever style sheet got loaded last. You see, because when they have the same names, they can collide. And when they collide with one another, that's not good. So in order to protect that, the SLDS, or the protect the styles, if you will, the SLDS team came up with a neat little concept that we call scoping. And I'm going to add in a scoping class here. I'm going to make a div, and I'm going to say class equals SLDS-scope. Now, when I do that, of course, the developer console is going to give me my in tag, and I'm just going to delete all of this and go right down here to the bottom of the page. And right before the end of my page, I'm going to go ahead and close that div tag. Now, a div tag, for, again, those that don't do a lot of front end, is nothing more than a box, if you will, a rectangle. And so this is wrapping the entire page. It's very important that we are wrapping the entire page so that we don't have any collisions. You see, because of that very special version of SLDS, that version that we're referencing there on line number 2, I said it is the most current version. Yes, it is, but it has a slight addition, and that is that every one of the styles within that CSS looks for a parent class called SLDS-scope. So each one of them looks to see, am I inside of a wrapper that has this class applied to it? And if so, I will then apply my style. All right. So this can help us avoid conflicts. And in fact, this is just, it is very, very crucial that we remember this, because without this wrapping class, then none of the styles from SLDS are going to be applied. Well, that's not entirely true, because there are some styles that are applied during what we call the reset. You see that reset happens. I'll just go ahead and save this page here, and then go back over to my org and watch this brownish line here, right? Watch this as I reload the page. It's going to move. You see, it is now moved up underneath that bluish line. And that's because what the reset has done is to take away things like padding and margin that comes standard on some styles, is just strip them all away. Now, why am I telling you this? Again, because it's important to understand that these styles are going to be applied to the entire page, right? So we've got some styling happening, but not really. It's not changed the look at all of our page, because up to now, the only thing that's being applied is those reset values. Everything else in SLDS, all of the other styles that we were just talking about when we were looking at the SLDS site, those styles have not been applied to our page at all. You see, because right now, we're still interpreting these declarative tags, and we are applying the styles coming from Classic. So I'm going to, instead of typing all the time and perhaps making an error here, I'm just going to grab some code for you and just paste that right in. So I'm just going to grab some code right here and head back over to my developer console. And I'm going to go ahead and change our new button. I'm going to change the new button to move from a old Classic button to a new Lightning button, or a Lightning new button, however you want to say that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. And what I pasted in is an attribute called style class, which in Visualforce just is simply saying, hey, I've got some styling, some other styling that I want to apply, some other classes that I want to apply to this particular element. In this particular case, we're applying SLDS button and then SLDS button dash dash neutral. And again, how did I know which ones to apply? Well, I just went over to the SLDS site and looked at what the style was for those buttons. So again, rocking right over here to the SLDS site, going to my buttons, and again, seeing what are the things that are needed for a button. Well, one thing we need is that SLDS button. And then I'm just simply going to find the variant that I like. For example, the theme SLDS-button neutral, and that way I've got that style as well. So once we have applied that and we've saved our page, I'll go back over into our org where we can reload the page. And you can see that as I do so, we're reloading, and there we have it. We have a new button that looks like Lightning. Now we could keep doing this. We could keep on going with some more styling. For example, I could change the sort table button to look like this as well by simply adding in that class. In fact, let's do another something. Let's actually take our table here, and I'll do that one as well. I'm gonna grab my style class for my table. We'll copy that. We'll head back over just again to see that this is all I'm really doing is adding in these style classes. In this particular case, again, SLDS table, table border, table with the cell buffer. Okay, again, saving this and then refreshing our page, we'll see that now our table moves from looking the way that it did in Classic into beginning to look more like a Lightning table. Now there's more to do here. For example, the headings and things need to be changed as well. So let me just grab that code really quickly, and we'll just take the entire page block table, and then I'll walk you through the changes to that code. We're just going to take that whole thing there, and we're just going to replace it. There we go. I'll just format my text or my code a little bit there. So now I've saved this, and we'll go ahead and look at the page, and then we'll come back and talk about the other classes that were applied. But here we go, refreshing one more time, and we see that now we've got, again, we're starting to get that better look, that look like Lightning. Except in Lightning, you don't have the gray background on that table, on the table header. So why am I getting part of my code, but not all of my code, or my styling? Why am I getting part of my styling, but not all of the styling? Well, that goes back to that C, that colliding, the collisions happening right now with our code. You see, because we have some code or some style, some styles coming from Lightning and some styles coming from Classic still and being merged together on the page. And we truly do not want that. So how do we get around that? And even more important, right now, we've begun adding some styles. Now, let me show you that there's one, maybe, I mean, it's going to depend on how you look at it, maybe downside to the way that we're approaching this right now. If I switch back over into Classic, and we head back over to our leads page, you'll notice that I have a table that looks somewhat like a lightning table. I have a new button that looks like a lightning button. So my styles are actually being applied whether I'm in Classic or in Lightning. Now that, as I said, that may be something you want to do. Maybe you want to gradually get people used to the Lightning look by adding in some Lightning styling. But I think it'd be better if we only showed this Lightning styling to our users that are in Lightning. But how can you do that? Well, it's actually quite simple. We're going to head back over here to our page again, and I'm going to then just one more time grab a little bit of code, and I'm going to do that so that I can add this to my Apex class that this page is using. You see it's using a controller called Dreamhouse Prospects, and I'm going to switch over to that Dreamhouse Prospects class where I'm just going to add in this code. Now this code is actually going to return a value for is classic, and it's going to return true or false. It's a Boolean value, as you can see, and it's going to ask, is the user using theme 3? Now, what is theme 3? Well, theme 3 is classic. So there's been two other themes, obviously, before we got to classic. Lightning is theme 4. So we want to know, is the user, the currently logged in user, are they using Classic or are they using Lightning? If they're using Classic, this value is going to get returned as true. Now, how do we use that? Well, again, I'm going to shortcut myself here by just going and grabbing in a little bit of extra code here. And I'm going to start by just doing this little bit here. Actually, I'm just going to grab this first bit, and then we'll talk about the rest here. I'm going to move back over here into my developer console. We're going to go back over into our page. I'm going to take this SLDS, Apex SLDS tag. I'm just going to replace it with the stuff that I just grabbed here. I'm going to just do some shift returns here. And then I'm going to say, hey, you know what? What is this? It's saying output panel rendered. And then it's evaluating what is the value of is classic. And so we're going to ask, is the user in Classic? Well, actually, we're going to ask, is the user not in Classic? In other words, did this come back as false? If it's coming back as false, it means they're in Lightning, and we want them to have the SLDS from Lightning. But of course, we need to ask to get this. So I'm going to just, again, shortcut myself here just very quickly and grab the entire page here so we can then just talk about some of the other things that I've done here. And the first thing is I want to direct your attention all the way up here to the top of the page where I've asked for the standard style sheets to be turned off, or excuse me, turned off or on, depending on the value of is classic. So we're saying if we're in class, in other words, it's coming back true, we want to use those standard style sheets. But if it's coming back false, then that means they're in Lightning, and so we don't want those standard style sheets. We don't want to collide with them. And so now we're wrapping that Apex SLDS in that output panel that is only going to be rendered if we are in Lightning. So when we're back in Classic, we're going to shut down all of the Lightning styling because we're not going to give the style sheet. Now, we've still got all of those, the same tags that we're using here. And you'll notice that I've got an output panel here that says rendered if we are in Classic, and that is going to contain my section header. It's going to contain my button. And then we've got another panel right down here that's going to be rendered only when we're in Lightning. And the reason that I've done this is because this little thing right here, this section header, is problematic for me. You see, most of the Apex tags, or most of the Visualforce tags that we have, well, I'm not going to say most, I'm going to say a lot of them have the ability to have that style class attribute. We already saw that with our command button. So if I begin to type style, then you can see style class is a valid attribute. And so all I need to do is to figure out what style I need to apply. But for things like section headers, you'll notice, there's no style class available to me. And that's because this tag actually generates more elements, in more HTML elements than just a single element, like a table. The Apex page block table is just generating a table. And we know and can understand that. A button is just generating a button. But that header is going to generate a lot of other elements. It's got the title and the image and the icon, and all of these things are going into that. And so we don't know, if we were to say style class equals blah, we don't know what to put blah on, because there's more than one element. And so when you have those situations, then what you're going to want to do is exactly what I've done here. Have some conditional rendering for a piece of the page to only be rendered in Classic or only be rendered in Lightning. So here is the page header in Lightning. And you'll see it is just a bit more code here than just that simple bit that we had up here. And the reason, again, is because we're using the markup from SLDS. So what did I do? I ran over to that page header section that I showed you earlier. I simply copied and pasted that over into my document and modified it to meet my needs. Okay, so that's sort of the idea. But you might be asking yourself, I scroll on down here to the bottom of the table here, where we have our Apex page block table. It's outside of those output panels, because it's going to be rendered regardless. It's going to be rendered whether we're in Lightning or in Classic, because if these styles that we're applying, that SLDS table and stuff, and also, by the way, we've applied a header class as well to each of our columns. These styles, without the corresponding CSS, do absolutely nothing. So it's okay to have those styles on there, even if we are rendering in Classic, because again, without the SLDS CSS, nothing's going to happen. Let's go ahead and save this and then go take a look at our page. If we look at our page back over here in, and I apparently have a, on line number 29, I must have made a little error here. Yes, I did. I was typing and accidentally typed a letter instead of the word div. So now let's go ahead and close that off so we can save. There we are. Now let's reload our page. And now we have a page that is 100% Lightning. But when we go back over and we look at it in Classic, all of our Classic users are still getting the leads page as it appeared inside of Classic. So they don't know the difference. They don't know that we've already begun the migration to Lightning, because we're going to be delivering Classic content, our Classic layout, to our Classic users, and our Lightning look and feel to our Lightning users. And that's how easy it is. Now, of course, again, I say how easy it is, yes, because we had a very simple page. But you get the idea. It's simply a matter of looking through your page content, finding what the corresponding styles are that need to be applied. Now, of course, you can use completely custom markup. And if you do, then you're going to want to tackle it slightly differently. But we'll talk about that in just a second, you see, because I've also got inside of my standard property detail page, if I scroll on down here, oh, look at that. Looks like a Classic page. And in fact, that's what it is. I've got a Visualforce page that I added to my standard page layout in the page layout editor back over in Classic. And we've been using this over in Classic all along. And now we've made the switch to Lightning. But again, those Visualforce pages just work. Now, of course, we might want to make this look like Lightning. And again, we can do that very easily. Just going to head over and do, again, some little copy and pasting here. And I'm just going to grab this code, I'll copy that, and then we'll head back over to our developer console, where I've actually got that page open already. And you can see that that page, again, is just a very, very simple Apex page, our Visualforce page, just with a page block table. So quite honestly, you already know, all I need to do is add in a style class on my table and add in some header classes on my columns, and I would be good. But I want to show you a different approach. And again, this is just so that you can see that there's many ways to achieve this Lightning look. I'll go ahead and scroll back up here to the top of the page, where you can see that now I've done that exact same thing again. We've asked for the standard style sheets to be turned on or off based upon whether or not we're in Classic. But this time I wrapped the entire page block table, or page block actually, with the output panel to be rendered only when we're in Classic. for everything else, that when we're in Lightning, I've actually got my own custom markup. And this custom markup is actually using a data table, and a data table coming from SLDS. So if I look on down here at the bottom of the table, you can see that I've got my table body and I've got a table row, and I'm repeating that row based on the values that are coming back from our controller. And we're just putting those values into the table exactly in the same way that we do in our standard Visualforce markup. But again, I wanted to show you that that is also an approach that you can use. If you find yourself with more complex pages, then you simply use your own custom markup that matches SLDS. So let's go ahead and save that and see that what that means is now when we look at our page, and we scroll on down to see our Visualforce page, now it looks appropriate here in Lightning. It actually looks like a Lightning table. Okay, but you're not impressed, I can tell, because you've already seen me do this. But now let's talk about another area. I remember I said, yes, we can embed Visualforce pages, but we can also use them as Lightning components. Now, how would we do that? Well, the first thing that we need to do in order to use that page as a Lightning component is we need to go up and open up our setup. So I'm going to head over to setup, and then I'm going to, in my quick find, I'm going to type in visual so that I can go to my Visualforce pages. And when I get to my Visualforce pages, I'm going to go ahead and edit that similar properties page, the page that we just changed to look like Lightning. And you can see there's that code down there. So you can see that it is in fact the same code that we just looked at. But where I want to direct your attention is right here to this checkbox, available for Salesforce mobile apps and Lightning pages. Now I'm going to go ahead and check this because this is the magical checkbox. What this it does is it says, hey, I want to actually be able to use this as a Lightning component. Now I'll go ahead and save this, and I can close my Visualforce page or my setup because I don't need it anymore. I'm going to go back over to my page here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to choose Edit Page. So we're going to go into App Builder here. Now, we still have our page down here in the standard layout. So this is the standard record detail layout that comes from the standard page layout editor. Now, just a little quick aside, if you ever want to get to this page layout editor really quickly, all you need to do is click on your header, and there you have your property layouts, or your page layouts, excuse me. In this case, it is a property layout that I can quickly go over to and show you that sure enough, right down here, there was that Visualforce page that has been embedded into my page, my standard record layout there through the page layout editor. Anyway, let's head on back over though to our property record page. And again, since that page or that document is there, I can't actually move it. It doesn't move around if I try to move it there, because again, I have to remove that using the standard page layout editor. But we'll leave it on the page for now because it's not hurting anything. What we're going to do is we're going to scroll on down here in the list of standard components over here on the left-hand side, and we'll notice that we have a component called Visualforce. Now, once we drag this onto the page, let's put this in the upper right-hand corner there, you can see that immediately that thing has gone out and displayed that similar properties page. Now, how did it, or why did it use that page? Well, that's the only page, it's the only Visualforce page that we've enabled that checkbox for. If I had more than one page in my org with that checkbox, then I would see those pages listed here in the drop down, and I would be able to pull or to point to the particular page that I'm interested in. Of course, we could also do other things like change the label of this. We could say this is going to be called Other Properties. Maybe change the height to 200 pixels so it doesn't take up quite as much room, and so on. But there you go. I'm using a Visualforce page inside of my Lightning pages as a Lightning component. So I think that's pretty interesting. But of course, you know, in this particular case, what I would probably do if I'm going to begin doing that, maybe having that type of customization here happening in my page, right? I might want to say, you know what? I want to actually take the leap, make this into a Lightning component. And if we did that, it might look something like this. So here I have a Lightning component in a different org here. And this is actually, I say a Lightning component. It is a single Lightning component, but it has two different instances on the page, because I've made this component flexible. Something that's really hard to do if you're going to do it in Visualforce. And I'm going to say, I want to be able, when I'm building this page as the admin, to be able to specify, I want to search by price, or search by number of bedrooms, or search by perhaps zip code, or whatever it happens to be. And I can specify this with my Lightning component as a design parameter. So this is what I've done. I've added these two components, these two instances of this component onto the page. Now, additionally, this component is, of course, smart. It's using something that is called force record data, which allows it to watch the data on the page for a change. So let's go ahead and change the price here. Let's make it $670,000. Now we're searching for houses plus or minus $100,000 of our price here. So I'll go ahead and save this. And you'll notice as soon as I do, we're going to see that our components have updated themselves as well. So we can see that there's a completely new search that's been executed here. Now, another thing that this component does is allows me to edit a record without actually being on that record's page. For example, we have 503 Park Drive and 503 Park Drive in both instances here. Let's say it has 4 bedrooms, or 4 bathrooms, sorry. So I'm gonna go ahead and edit that. I'm gonna say, let's make it have 4 baths and save that. And you'll notice as soon as we did, the update happened over here as well. We can see that it now says 4 baths as well. Now, there's a lot of functionality built into this little component. And again, a lot of this was done through design parameters, just by being able to specify, hey, search by price or search by bedrooms or what have you. But now I want to go one step further. I've still got users back on Classic, and they would like to have this functionality. But of course, this is a Lightning component. So can I give it to them? Well, absolutely. So let's scroll right on down here where we might notice that, oh, look, where we had that similar properties Visualforce page before, it's now been replaced with a Lightning component. Now, this is a Lightning component running in a Visualforce page, running inside of Lightning. So, wow, it's truly the Salesforce turducken, or at least as close as we can get, right? We've really gone full circle here. I want to prove that to you, because what we're going to do is we're going to go right back up here and we're going to say, you know what? Let's go ahead and switch over to Classic. And inside of Classic, we'll go to a property here. We'll just pick out a property and scroll on down. And sure enough, there we have that similar properties Lightning component inside of my Classic layout. Now, how did it get there? Well, it got there with something we call Lightning Out. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my developer console one more time here in this org, and I want to show you that very same page. So let me make this a little bit bigger, and we will actually show you that similar properties Visualforce page that's now been updated. I've took away that page block table and stuff that we had before, and now I've replaced it. First, I've added this thing called Apex Include Lightning. Now, when we use this tag, this says, hey, I need the Lightning Out framework, and so please include that. You can see I'm also including SLDS in case I was to need that. And then notice the HTML. There's not much to it. There's just a div with an ID of content and another div inside it with an ID of Lightning component. That's it. That's the entire markup of my page. Because where the magic actually happens is right here inside of our script tag. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is we're going to pick up the ID of the property that we're on. So we're getting the ID of the property that the current page that we're looking at, and we're going to save that as a variable called record ID. And then we're going to pick up our user's context. We're going to ask, what is our user using? Is it theme 3 or theme 4? In other words, are we in Classic or are we in Lightning? And the reason we need to know this is important. We'll come to in just a second. But then finally, I'm just going to say, all right, Mr. Lightning Out, I need to use a feature in Lightning Out, and that is to build an app. Now, this is a Lightning app. Now, a Lightning app is different from an app in Lightning. The Lightning app is a standalone window running on its own. And in fact, you've just seen an instance of that a minute ago when we were in App Builder. App Builder is actually a Lightning app. And what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to use this Lightning app. Now, within the Lightning app, all we're doing is declaring the dependencies, declaring, in other words, the pieces that we need, the pieces, the Lightning components that we're going to be using in this page. So I've actually got 3 here. There's one called similar properties. Inside of similar properties, we also have one called similar property, singular, and similar property edit as the 3rd one. So these are the 3 components that make up that larger component. And then finally, we're going to pass in the force namespace events that are going to come along for the ride inside of our app, because we're going to need to use those. Now, how are we going to use those? Well, we're going to go right back over here into our Visualforce page. We're going to say, I want you to go ahead and create that app and create a component inside of it. Which component? Well, that is the master component called similar properties. That is going to be the one that wraps the entire thing, that gives us all of the visuals that we were looking at there. We're going to pass in its record ID, and we're going to build it in the div with the ID of Lightning components. So we're going to put it right there in the code. Now, remember I said that some things change when you move from Lightning to Classic? One of those things is navigation. When we're doing navigation here within our Lightning component, we have to know whether we are in Lightning, we're in a component, we're a Lightning component inside of a Visualforce page running inside of Lightning, like we saw a moment ago, or whether we are in a Visualforce page running in Classic. So what we're going to do is we're going to hijack the navigate to S-object event, which we're using inside of our native Lightning component to navigate to different properties. So we're going to hijack that event, and then we're going to figure out, when we hear that event fire inside of our Visualforce page, we're going to figure out whether our user is using theme 3 or theme 4. Now, you'll notice there are 2 theme 4s here, theme 4T and theme 4D. That is for Salesforce 1 and for the Lightning desktop or Lightning experience on the desktop. So if we hear that, yes, we're in theme 4, we're going to use these that event that we passed into the application, that Salesforce, that force namespaced events, and we're going to say go ahead and navigate to the object defined by whatever record ID that we are passing. And then if we are not in theme 4, that means we are in Classic, we are a Visualforce page running in Classic, then we're going to use the navigation model that a lot of us are probably familiar with, just saying window.parent.location and navigate us on over that way. So there you have it, is back over here inside of Classic, again, with all that functionality. So if I need to navigate over to 211 Charles Street, I just simply click, and here we are at 211 Charles Street. If we go on down here, of course, we want to edit something in 95 Gloucester Street. Again, same functionality, all the functionality that you saw my Lightning component doing in a native Lightning page is now being done inside of Classic through the magic of Lightning out in Visualforce. Now, I know that was a whole lot of information. Let's head back over to our PowerPoint presentation here. And we're going to end out by saying, where do you go next? Well, of course, where you go next, you want more information about all these things that you've heard, head on over to Trailhead. We've got a ton of content over there that it will talk to you about moving from Classic into Lightning, building Lightning components, and so on. So I encourage you to head over there. And in fact, I'll give you a little sneak peek coming very soon. This entire thing that you've just seen me working on, those migrating those pages and building those pages to look like Lightning, it's going to be a project in Trailhead very, very soon. So look out for that, and then you'll be able to build that very same similar properties component and find out how to put it into that Visualforce page as well. And then, of course, I know each and every one of you, I'm going to see you in just a few weeks out here in San Francisco, where we are going to be having our developer conference, our Trailhead DX conference. So again, June 28th and 29th, 2 action-packed days full of content and sessions, and pop on in. I'll be doing a workshop on this exact topic one more time. So if you want to come, again, get hands-on building it with me and getting questions answered, you can do that at Trailhead DX, and I hope to see you all there. And finally, I know you've had a lot of questions and want to get answers to those questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this webinar up with a blog post on our developer blog So just go to developer.salesforce.com, and on our developer blog, we're going to answer some of the questions that have come up during this webinar. And with that, again, I'd like to say thank you very much for hanging out with me, and I hope to see you at Trailhead DX. My name is Greg Ruiz, and I look forward to meeting you in person. Thank you so much.